Oh, hello there. Welcome back to Russell's Movie Reviews, the show where I review stuff that's mostly pretty good and maybe one of the best movies of all time, or a film that absolutely sucks and sure me in the depths of hell. And welcome everyone to Season 6 of Russell's Movie Reviews. Holy shit, I can't believe I made it up to 6 seasons of this. Thank you guys so much for watching this sort of content. I love making them as much as I hope you guys love watching them and enjoying them. So yeah, and I thought, like last season, since we started off with the second annual Halloween special for season 5, why don't we do the same for season 6? So welcome everyone to the third annual Halloween special. As you guys couldn't tell by my cup of choice and my shirt of choice. And I thought, how could you start a 3 years of doing this? This is crazy to think about. But inevitably it came down to one choice to start off the year. And I thought, you know what? We haven't talked about really any slashers really besides, the famous Michael Myers. So why don't we move on to another famous slasher that is pretty well known, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows most in pop culture. As you guys can tell by the shirt, as well as the title and the thumbnail, we're going to be discussing A Nightmare on Elm Street, which was released on November 16th of 1984. Now, this should go as no surprise. If you're a horror fan, you should know A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's one of the biggest horror franchises of all time. So, it comes as no surprise that I've known about these films for years, but I never really sat down and watched them because I never really had them. I, didn't have any of them on physical media, and I never had any of them on any of the streaming services that I was, that I had back then. And so, I actually forgot when exactly I got this, but a few years ago, I managed to pick up this collection here, which has the first 7 films, which is, from the original Nightmare on Elm Street all the way up to Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So far, though, I do not have Freddy vs. Jason or the remake. So, luckily, though, we are, not talking about those ones right now. Those are going to be far, far down the road. All I wanted to talk about, really, was the original. Because, that's, the one that kicked off this entire thing. And of course, it's on this box set, so I'm, very proud that it was on there. And also recently, it was added to Netflix, but unfortunately, right as I was getting ready to, start watching this, they removed it off of Netflix. So I was like, well, shit, there goes the convenience much. I have to pop out this box set, which, granted, it's not that big of a deal, because honestly, I'll get it more into this later, but I really do actually like this box set, which, again, I'll go into more about the certain details about this one later. I'm not going to go into fully into depth about it. Mostly just talk about the Nightmare on Elm Street section for the original. But it is a very, very neatly packed box set. But anyways, enough of the backstory and the history, or at least my history with the film. Let's go on and talk about, the film itself. So this was made with a budget of just over $1 million, and domestically it made about $25 million, and worldwide it made about $57 million. So this was a resounding success. And I actually have a fun fact about its box office, but we'll mention that later on. And this was directed by the fantastic Wes Craven, who before this was really only known for making B movies, basically just very low budget B movies. So to hear that, obviously back then that he would get be a part of a studio to make a movie, critics, people were a bit skeptic about it, just like, you really do it? And he sure pulled it off with making one of the best known franchises in horror history. And, bringing back a dead company, because Yeah, this was made. This was at least distributed by New Line Cinema. Uh, who before this was really not that known, really. And funny enough, they were about to fall into bankruptcy. But then they decided, you know what? Let's make. Apparently, horror is doing big rounds recently, especially with John Carpenter's Halloween that just recently came out. At the time, they were doing a pre-production on this film, so they're like, "Screw it, let's greenlight our own horror movie," and the rest of it is history. So, the production for this film is. It's funny. It's kind of funny because it's like you look at it overall and it's like, well, it didn't really go that bad. But then you look into certain details about it and then you're like, oh, there's some like shit that went down, and it's funny to think about, which I'll go into later. But mostly, I think it was a pretty normal production, except for a few hiccups here and there, which again I'll get to later. But overall, it was a pretty smooth shoot. And it was obviously released in '84, and it did numbers, and it would spawn a everlasting franchise, starting with a sequel that came out less than a year later, which I'll mention a little bit at the end. But before we get into that, let's talk about that plot, shall we? So, a few Midwestern teenagers fall prey to Freddy Krueger, played by the fantastic Robert Englund, a disfigured midnight mangler who preys on the teenagers in their dreams, which, in turn, kills them in reality. After investigating the phenomena, Nancy Thompson, played by the fantastic Heather Langenkamp, begins to suspect that a dark secret kept by her friend's parents may be the key to unraveling the mystery. But can Nancy and her boyfriend Glenn, played by a very young Johnny Depp, solve the puzzle before it's too late? Well, no shit, it's a horror movie, and the fact that it went on to make numerous sequels, it's pretty obvious that, what the outcome of it is. But, not going to spoil it too much. In fact, I actually have a little section I want to talk about with the ending for this film. But again, I'll get to that later. So, yeah, this is a pretty kind of formulaic horror, synopsis. But at the same time, this was very early into the slasher kind of genre because, Halloween only came out 6 years earlier. So, this was, really at the start of, the slasher genre. Which, ironically enough, this was technically the last of the big three franchises to come out back in the 80s. It was, first Halloween came out, then Friday the 13th in 1980, and then finally Nightmare on Elm Street in 84. Although, grandly, the main villain, or the main star, I guess, for Friday the 13th wouldn't come out until a year later. But even then, that was 3 years before this film even came out. But I digress. Point is that, you could back then take a very formulaic plot, change a few things about it, and it works because people don't really care about plots now. Or back then, they care about it more now because, there's a thriving business over it, and, people actually care to analyze and, nitpick these movies. But back then, people were just like, I'm going to go to the movies to see a fun horror movie. And that's really what you got with A Nightmare on Elm Street. Not saying that it's a bad movie or downright repetitive. That's more the sequels, really. But for this film, it really works with its simple narrative and kind of structure. Because it's, like I said, it was early in the genre that, studios could really make simple plots and be like, we could take this and it will make us money. Because people, they see a new horror movie and they're like, that could be interesting. And then they go and see it. And then they go and see it 10 more times because they like it. Which, granted, yeah, this one didn't do as successful, I feel like, than... Certainly not than Halloween. I don't know about Friday the 13th because I haven't done that much research in terms of box office performance. But obviously comparing this film to the box office of the original Halloween, it's not, Halloween beats it. But granted, that's also because that film was made with a $350,000 budget and made like 80 million worldwide, whereas this film made with a budget of about $1 million and grossed about 57 million. So I don't know. Maybe it kind of showed that maybe it was slowing down, but at the same time, it's a new franchise, so people aren't exactly like, they were just trying to see like, will this work? And clearly it showed. And I feel like that a big part of that is because of the cast, which we're going to go into now. Obviously, we have the fantastic Heather Langenkamp as, Nancy Thompson, who is... It's weird because me going into this film, I knew about certain points of... Like, I knew certain points about it, but I didn't know the entire thing. But... it was, a bit, it was a bit shocking when I popped in this film for the first time, because yes, shocker shocks, this is the first time that I was ever viewing A Nightmare on Elm Street, and it was, it's weird for me to say, I was kind of going into it, like, expecting it to be somewhat good, but at the same time, I was like, I'm gonna try and keep myself very, very, like, laid back, and just be like, let's not go into it too much, would be like, oh, this is gonna be a great movie, because then you might get disappointed. But I was genuinely surprised with actually how good it was. But, yeah, no, I was surprised when we started off with when you start the film, you get introduced to, Tina, who is, played by Amanda Wise. And she is set up to be the, like, the lead character for, like, the first 10-15 minutes of the film. Which is surprising considering the fact that, they have all the marketing and especially all the posters. You see Nancy all over it. You see Freddy Krueger and stuff like that, but the main girl is Nancy on all the marketing. So to start your film off with Tina, I feel like there's a very, it's honestly a kind of, for me actually, a very good point, is because it's like, they kind of want to say like, or it kind of shows that it's like they are willing on taking risks. And what I mean by that, it's basically they kind of subverge, the audience's expectations, where it's like, okay, we see the marketing, we see this girl. That's going to be the start. And then you start off the movie, and then you see another girl, and you're like, did the marketing have me, all tripped up? But then, as you continue watching the movie, certain things happen, and then you see the girl that's on the marketing become the main character, and it's like, oh. So I actually do like that, even though it is I'll admit, a bit weird to start off like that. It is a very good, kind of unique choice, I would say, but it did work out. So yeah, no, like I said, we start off with Tina in this kind of weird corridor, with, the nightmare. Actually, technically we do start the film off with, the build, some guy building this club, which is obviously the Freddy Krueger club, which is iconic in pop culture. Like, you mentioned Freddy Krueger, and that is one of the first things that pops up to anyone's mind, is just that fucking glove, man. Like, you do not fuck with that glove, and it's obvious to see why, because it's, it stains in your mind that can fuck you up, because it's basically just a regular glove with these like finger knives on each of the main 4 fingers, and then I don't know why they exclude the thumb, but basically the 4 main fingers, and then you know, it's a very efficient weapon, and it looks terrifying when you first see it getting built. And it's just like, like I said, it's like you look at that, you see that, and you go, stay the fuck away with me with that fucking glove. I do not want to mess with that shit. And it works. It cements it in your mind, and then you build up, and then you get shown to Tina walking through this corridor, getting freaked out by certain things, and then you just see this guy with this, like, you see glimpses of him with this, with the finger knife glove. And, after the nightmare, she wakes up, she has a brief conversation with her mom, and then, goes and, and then we hear that classic, Freddy lullaby that, like the glove, as soon as you mention Freddy Krueger, you think, oh, that fucking lullaby. And it's like, you always have that one person that as soon as you mention Freddy Krueger, they are just gonna start singing that lullaby, like 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, and then everyone's gonna be like, yo, like, fuck off, man, you stop, like, that's creepy as hell. And then because it shows that this film has it like certain things about it works. And certain things get cemented in your mind and shows that this is gonna work. So yeah, the finger knife glove at the very beginning, and then the lullaby, and then you begin to introduce the group of friends. We obviously have Tina, then we have Nancy, and then we have Rod, played by, I'm probably gonna butcher this, Jesus Garcia, I think. And then Glenn, played by a very young Johnny Depp. And I think it's funny that, this is way before he became a very popular star in the late 80s. And the way that he got casted is funny too, and I'll get to that later when I get to the fun facts, but it's, if I had to be honest, though, he is kind of one of the weaker actors, but, like, it's weird it's hard for me to categorize his character, because it's like, it's honestly very good, and I know that many people say that he's probably, like, the weakest actor of the 4 teens, but honestly, in my opinion, I think that Rod is the weakest, because Glenn, he seems like, I think he's built up to be like the jock character, but at the same time, he's not the jock character, really. He's just like the boyfriend to Nancy, and is just like trying to to support her. Whereas Rod seems like the generic. Rod seems more like the generic jock character than Glenn. And because the way that he delivers his dialogue and the things that he has to say, it's very, like, that brought on more, like, of a generic jock character to me than Glenn. And Glenn, honestly, like, Glenn is a more interesting character than Rod, because Rod is just, like I said, he's just the generic jock, really. Whereas Glenn, he has a lot more depth and a lot more character to him. That makes him interesting. And then we obviously have Tina, who is like, is set up to be the main girl, like the final girl. But then they have this sleepover because Tina has that nightmare at the beginning, and then of course her mother goes off to like some vacation. I think they say it's like Vegas or something like that. So she's off, and then so she's like, I don't want to sleep alone. I'm gonna invite my friends over. So they all get invited, and then we get shown to another dream sequence with Tina, and 15-20 minutes in, she's killed off by Freddy. And it's just like, whoa. like, that just took a turn. Like, you set up this character as the main protagonist, and then you kill her off, and then you say, oh yeah, no, this is the main character. So it's like, damn, that's actually, like, clever. And I that's what I love about this movie, is that they subvert your expectations, and then they just go, like, yeah, this is what we're going with, not that. And it's just like, holy fuck. So yeah, no, Tina gets killed off, and then Rod is put on the wanted list, because obviously the police think, you know, they were having arguments. He killed her in the bedroom and then escaped. So he goes, like, he runs off, and then eventually he does get arrested for the death. But obviously we know that he didn't kill him. It was fucking Freddy Krueger. So then we follow Nancy, Nancy and Glenn technically, but it's obviously more Nancy, who starts, you know, dreaming Tina, like because, you know, obviously this affects her very much, and so she starts dreaming about her in the in the school, because she falls asleep in the classroom. That she like looks like at the door, and then there's just Tina in a fucking body bag, and it's like like a clear body bag. And even that shot, like, of like her just saying Nancy, and then her trying to like reach her hand out in the body bag, it's still that ingrained in your mind, because it's so just weird and just like, god damn. And then we follow Nancy around the school, and then she ends up somehow, okay, I get that it's a dream, but it's like, there's certain points with some of the dream sequences where I'm just like, how the fuck does that work? And it's like, and then I have to think, like, okay, no, this is a dream, so not all of it has to make sense. So like, because basically she sees the body bag, like, she sees like the trail of blood, and then she looks down, and then she sees like the body bag getting taken into a direction. So she follows it, and somehow the body bag manages to leave like a perfect blood trail down these stairs for Nancy to follow it and go into the basement area of the school, which of course happens to be a fucking boiler room, because dreams and Freddy Krueger. And then she has a brief encounter with Freddy Krueger, and burns her arm, and that kind of starts all of the effects that, you know, Nancy starts to get throughout the film, you know, because she's obviously getting sleep deprived, and then she gets burned on the arm. Then I think she starts developing the gray hair. Then oh yeah, and then they have then, like, I think Glenn comes over at one point to her house, and then she falls asleep, and then this is what I mean again about the I guess continuity for this for these dream sequences, is that it obviously doesn't really need to make sense, but she falls asleep again in her house with Glenn there, and okay, no, this is one point where I think this is even still brought up to this day, like, how the fuck does that work, where she exits her house, then she starts like walking down the street, and then she turns around and goes, Glenn, are you still there? And then Glenn walks out of the bushes saying like, yeah, I'm still here. So I'm like, so wait, is Glenn at that moment like a figment of her dream, like of her imagination? Or like, are they dream sharing? Or is it something else entirely? And it's never explained, because later on, like after the dream sequence, it showed that Glenn has fallen asleep in her room, like presumably right after Nancy fell asleep. So it's like, okay, so then that starts bringing up more of the questions, like, so, and then it's like, again, like, was Glenn like actually in the dream with Nancy, or was that like a figment of the dream? Or was that something else entirely? And it's never explained. And I don't even think any of the filmmakers went on to explain it. And which still, I think, causes debate to this day about, like, what the hell was that about? So yeah, no, after that, I think that's when she gets the... No. It started developing before, but it's after that where I think it starts becoming more apparent that she's getting the gray hairs. Then, they go to, the police station to get, try and save Ron, and it's like, yeah, I get that it's an early 80s horror movie, so certain things have to be kind of excused, but at the same time, why the fuck are why are these police officers being, like, so kind of a dick to Nancy, where it's like, I want to go and see Ron, and it's like, well, I'm the night guard, like, I'm the guard that's taking the night shift, and I say, no, you can't go in there. And then the father turns up, and then they start talking even more back and forth as we get intercuts with Ron being, having his death sequence with Freddy, where, okay, I have to be honest, I mean, granted, I feel like that this is, pretty unanimous that I think that Rod has the weakest death in the entire movie, where he's sleeping in the prison cell, and the blanket, like, Freddy's controlling the blanket, and it slowly kind of wraps around his neck, and then drags him over to the wall, and kind of loops around the bars, and basically hangs him. So it looks like he just committed suicide. And it's like, okay, yeah, that is neat and inventive, but at the same time, when you have, like, before this, you've had Tina, getting, like, in the dream, she, like, I think it's a cool effect when she's, like, trying to wrestle the face out, like trying to push Freddy back, and then she rips off, like, kind of like the face mask to have that, like, laughing face. I think it's really funny. And then, and then she's, like, wrestling around the bed, and then I'm guessing it's her pajamas, like, rips open, then you just see, like, the four slashes just go down right her chest. And then she starts, like, kind of, like, floating, like, as she's wrestling with Freddy. And then hits the wall, and it starts, like, going up the wall, and then onto the roof, still wrestling with Freddy as he continues to, like, presumably cut her up. And then Freddy just drops her onto the bed, splashes blood right in the face of Rod, and then she just falls onto the floor. And then you get Rod, where he just basically gets hung, and it's like, it's pretty weak in comparison. And then more investigation in terms of, like, like, who was he? And then, like, I think, the mom, after the funeral, takes her to, basically, like, a facility for dreams and shit. And then, they test her, like, as she's sleeping, and then she starts freaking the fuck out again. And then not only she has, like, cuts, like, I think, like, right here on her arm, she pulls out his fucking hat. Like, that is the most clear-cut proof up to that point for anyone in the movie. Like, if she could have done that, I mean, I think even one person said, like, if she did that, why didn't she bring out, like a sack, like, why didn't she went and rob a bank and brought out, like, a sack full of money? But it's like, yeah, she pulls Freddy's hat out of the dream, and she's like, I brought this out of the dream. And even then, the mother and everyone else in that room thinks, oh, she's making this shit up. How the fuck can you pull? Like, you clearly didn't see the hat at all before. So do you think she somehow, like, pulled it out of her pants, put it in front, like, on her lap, and then when she woke up, she's like, oh, look at this, I found the hat. That's my biggest nitpick about this movie, is, like, how the hell is any of the scientists and anyone in that room? I mean, yeah, it's Nancy, her mom, the Doctor played Dr. King, played by the fantastic Charles Fleischer, who ironically a few years later would go on to play Roger Rabbit. I find that funny. Going from a serious role in this film, and then 4 years later, being like a fucking cartoon character. But anyway. So yeah, no, you have the only people that are in that room is Nancy, her mom, Dr. King, and then like the assistant. And all three of them see her pull this fucking hat out, and then they're just like, oh yeah, no, she's making this shit up. Like, how the hell do you come to that conclusion? But it's also grainly, it's like, they pass over that scene very quickly, and then they kind of just go on to the next scene. But it's like, at the same time, it's like, how the fuck does that even work? And then the more research comes up, and then we really get the backstory about Freddy, from Nancy's mom, played by Ronnie Blaker or Blakey. Basically, Freddy, obviously, if you guys don't know the story, it's pretty synonymous with the character. But if you guys don't know the story, he was convicted, but he was a child murderer who killed about 20 kids when he was alive. The police arrested him, but someone didn't sign the correct thing in the papers, so he was let go. And so the parents were pissed about this and said, "Screw it, we're gonna go and kill him." So they tracked him down to this old boiler room. They lined the entire building with gasoline and set the thing ablaze, killing him in the process. And they don't explain it in this film, because obviously, the less said, the better. But it is explained how he was able to become basically a killer demon that would invade teenagers' dreams and kill them in like part 4, 5, 6, whatever. But then we obviously get the final real. Well, I shouldn't say the final kill in the movie, but the quintessential kill that pretty much if you didn't remember Tina's death earlier in the movie, you would certainly recognize this one from A Nightmare on Elm Street, where Nancy says, talks to Glenn for really the final time, and then stupidly, obviously, even though Nancy kept on telling him, don't fall asleep, of course he falls asleep, and then in one of I think, in my opinion, the most memorable kill in the entire movie, we see the hands coming up from the bottom, like from under the bed, drag him into the bed itself, and we cut back to the hole in the bed, and a fountain of blood just shoots up right into the ceiling, and just gallons of blood just shoots up into the roof. And like I said, the most iconic death in the entire movie. So ironically enough, so remember how I said at the beginning of this review that the production was pretty smoothly. Well, the production went very smoothly, except for a couple parts. This is one of them. So basically, for both Tina's death and Glenn's death, they both had they were both built on this like rotating set where it was basically just like a cube on like I forgot exactly what it was, but basically it allowed them to like move it 360 vertically, horizontally, whatever. And so they used that for Tina's death when she's like on the walls and then like on the roof, like sliding around. They used that set, and then they redressed it for Glenn's death. And basically, I'm not gonna go. I forgot exactly all the specifics about it. You can easily probably look it up, or in the in the description of this review, you'll find a review from a channel called Off the Shelf Reviews that goes way more into depth about what happened when they were shooting Glenn's death. But basically, as soon as the gallons and gallons of blood was being poured in, and as soon as the blood hit the light that was like on the roof, like from our point of view, it's obviously on the roof. As soon as the blood hit that light, it like basically exploded and it sent an electrical current into the set, and like I think it electrocuted some of the people that were dumping the blood in. So, and that wasn't bad enough. Like the set started like tilting and rotating, and you see that in the film when the mother barges into the room and then she looks at the aftermath, and then you get that shot of like the blood that's like moving on the ceiling. That's because the set started to tilt and it was going completely out of control, and I don't know exactly how they stopped it, but they obviously somehow did stop it. And considering the fact that this was a movie made with only $1 million, they only had the budget to do one take of it, and it works. I think it's even on. Let me check. It probably is on some of the behind the scenes featurettes on the movie. But yeah. Obviously, and then after that we get like 15 to 20 minute sequence of Nancy, like she first sets up the fucking house, like she's like a prototype Kevin from Home Alone, because she booby traps the shit out of her house, like cuts a hole in a light bulb and puts like gunpowder in it, and then sets up like a tripwire, and then puts wires up a sledgehammer in front of a door, and then sets like gasoline in the basement, like full out Home Alone before Home Alone was even a thing. Then she pulls Freddy out of the dream. Then we obviously get the Home Alone sequence, pretty much, as I like to call it, where I think she first grabs like the coffee pot in her room, smashes it over Freddy's head, runs out, gets the sledgehammer ready, and then as she's trying to get attention from like the police officers on the other side because they're investigating Glenn's death, Freddy Krueger rips open the door and sledgehammer to the chest, falls over and the banister. And I love the fact that considering the fact that we're watching, like I obviously watched this on Blu-ray, and in its original presentation, you could see when the stunt double falls over the banister, you could see the mat that he hits, and it kind of peeks over into the lens, and it's like, oh, I like that. And I like that they didn't digitally remove it or some bullshit like that. Then, he gets on the tripwire, gets the tripwire, the light bulb explodes with gunpowder. Then she lures him to the basement, pours like the gasoline over him, lights a match, and sets him on fire. Which finally catches the attention of the police officers and is like, oh shit, the fucking house is on fire. So they go in, investigate, and okay, and then this is like another point where it's like, okay, but the dreams, it's kind of plausible just to say, okay, yeah, it's a dream, so it doesn't really make that much sense. But this, how the fuck does this make sense? Nancy leaves him, so she sets him on fire. He runs up the stairs. She bashes the door in his face. He falls back down the stairs, attempts to climb back up them again, collapses on the stairs of the basement. So when she's at the door, gets the police officers, they break in and notice that he's not there. That's about 20 to 30 seconds. So how the fuck does he go from the basement and somehow sneaks around Nancy to go all the way upstairs while he's on fire and break into her mom's bedroom and set her aflame? Because that's what happens. He sneaks around the police officers. Nancy and the dad, played by the fantastic John Saxon, who you guys may remember, or if you guys ever watched this sort of shit, he played a significant role in the Bruce Lee classic Enter the Dragon. But yeah, no, they rush up the stairs. They see him, basically strangling the mother while they're both on fire. And then the dad kind of runs in, puts like the blanket on top of both of them and rips it off. And then you just see this like ghostly apparition of like the mom's skeleton with like burn marks and like the clothes still on. I don't know how that fucking works. And she like slowly sinks into the bed, which is like, okay, sure, it's near the end of the movie, so I guess I can buy that. And then Freddy comes up for one more scare, and then Freddy, I think that Freddy's actually defeated in a very good way in this film, where it's just basically the power of disbelief, where she's like, yeah, you're not real, this is a dream, you ain't nothing, you shit, get out. And then she goes to the door, and yeah, he basically just vanishes back in. Because I think that there's a lot of debate about when you kill Freddy in the real world, where would he go? And most people say we're just back into the dream realm, so then the cycle starts all over again. Okay, and then we get on to the ending. And this is what I was talking about earlier with, so there are technically 4 separate endings for this film. But I think only one was put into prints that were put into theaters. And that is, what we get on, media nowadays with when we watch the film, she opens up the door and then it's all nice and sunny outside and the mom's still alive. And they have like a quick banter back and forth like, oh, everything's okay. And then Glenn, Tina, and Rod arrive in Glenn's car, and then they're talking, and then the roof kind of slaps on down, and then you notice it's Freddy's stripes. And then they're talking, and then the roof kind of clamps together, like it locks, and then the windows are slowly rising by themselves, and then they all start freaking out, and the car drives off as the mother is, not, like, I think obliviously, like, waving, like, bye. And then Freddy punches through the window and drags her away. And then you hear the lullaby and credits roll. That is not the ending that Wes Craven wanted for the film. In fact, he wanted, like, a happy ending because it was, like, obviously, he wanted to be, like, a one-time deal done, that's it. But, of course, the studio is like, no, we like what we have so far, but you're going to leave it open for possible sequels. So that's what we have as an ending for the regular theatrical cut. Now, on the Blu-ray release, at least, as far as I know, we have 3 alternative endings for the original Nightmare on Elm Street. We have these, because they are... I think they're all, they're divided up by, I think the first one's, so there's the regular ending that we get on the, when you watch the movie. Then we have the scary ending, the happy ending, and the bad ending. So the scary ending is basically, Nancy walks through the door, they have the same conversation with her mom, the car drives up, and then we get an alternative shot of them where the roof doesn't come up, and they just drive off happily ever after. But we obviously get the final shot of the glove punching through the window and grabbing the mom, which, if you guys don't know, I think it's pretty common knowledge that it's obvious when you watch like the Blu-ray, when the mom gets dragged through the wall or through the window, it's not like, it's like a doll, but it's actually I'm not kidding. It was apparently a fucking sex doll that they pulled through the window. Not kidding. I think they even say that in some of the documentaries on the Blu-ray. But yeah, so yeah, no, so that's a scary ending where basically they just use it. The roof doesn't come down, they drive off, and then the mother gets pulled through the window. The good ending is that same shot of the, basically it plays out normally, and then the same shot where the roof doesn't come up and they just drive off and that's it. And then you get the lullaby. That's the most boring ending, I will admit. But the bad ending is not that much better. where basically it actually plays out like the normal ending that we have at the end of the film, where the the car drives up, the roof comes down, you see the stripes, and then the windows come up. But right before they drive off, that's when the mother gets pulled for the window. And as they drive off and you hear the lullaby start, it cuts to a shot of Freddy in the car driving. Like, he's driving the car, even though we saw Glenn before. And then we just get the continuation of the lullaby, then end credits. I don't know if that works for me. Like, I can understand if, like Freddy came out of the seat, like, he popped up out of the seat, and then everyone starts, like, screaming at him, like, he's terrified, and then he's driving the car. But no, it legit just, it goes from the girls jump roping, and then immediately cuts to a shot of Freddy driving the car. So is it like, did Glenn turn into Freddy? Or did Freddy, like, pop into the car, push Glenn aside, and then started driving? Like, there's so many questions that you could pop up with that ending that it's honestly... Whereas the good ending is the most boring, I think that the bad ending is honestly the weakest one. And honestly, I think that even the canonical ending that we have is still a bit iffy for me. And I think that actually the best version is the scary ending, where it's like, you know, they did survive, or at least Nancy has survived, but Freddy is still alive and kills the mother right at the end. I like that instead of, you know, the striped roof coming up and then the windows coming up and basically saying, no, Freddy still has control of the car, then kills the mother, and credits. So, I want to hear what you guys think about the different endings and which one is your favorite in the comment section below. Because that would actually be a very interesting topic to talk about. Anyway, but yeah, that's pretty much about it. I think, I pretty much mentioned all the cast members. So yeah, real quick, let's talk about the this box set, or at least for the first film. I think it's a pretty nice cover, but admittedly, it is a bit kind of bland. It just has like a Nightmare on Elm Street collection, and then there's just like a face of Freddy Krueger. Then the back, we obviously have all this information, and of course, I don't know why they decided to mix pretty much all of the films into, like, the first one gets its own separate disc. Then disc 2 is parts 2 and 3. Disc 3 is parts 4 and 5. The fourth disc is Freddy's Dead and Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and then the fifth disc is a DVD bonus features disc. But the first film has the most amount of special features. It has the Ready Freddy focus points, see alternative takes, and learn filmmaking secrets behind the nightmare by jumping to video highlights while watching the movie. 2 different commentaries, one with director Wes Craven and co-stars Heather Langenkamp and John Saxton, as well as cinematographer, as well as the cinematographer. And then we also have a commentary with Wes Craven, along with Robert Englund, Heather Langenkamp, and Ronnie Blakey, and then producer Robert Shea and co-producer Sarah Reiser. We have the alternative ending, which I just talked about. 3 featurettes: The House That Freddy Builds, The Legacy of New Line Horror, Never Sleep Again, The Making of a Nightmare on Elm Street, and Night Terrors. The Origins of Wes Craven's Nightmares, and then an interactive trivia track. And so that's a pretty packed disc, along with the movie itself, and then the different audio tracks. So yeah, it's a very it's a very packed disc, and I do really like it. I don't know if that's the same with like the individual releases like of the first one, but yeah. Anyways, moving on to the fun facts real quick. I just realized we're about to hit 15 minutes on this, and it's like, holy shit. Fun fact number 1. I did kind of mention this at the beginning, but yeah, New Line Cinema, who was the studio that distributed the film, was saved from bankruptcy with the success of this film, and the studio was jokingly called afterwards the house that Freddy built, which is like, that's a funny ass nickname, and it is true. Then the second fun fact, which again I kind of did mention earlier, but I didn't go too into depth about it, is that one of the reasons why Johnny Depp was casted in the film was because Wes Craven's daughter thought that he was apparently dreamy, and I'm not even kidding. I think he even mentions that in one of these featurettes, and she even threatened to leave their home if he wasn't casted in the movie. So he was like, "Oh shit, I guess I gotta cast him in my movie now," and that would lead into the aspiring, roles that Johnny Depp will get and become this massive success. The music was done by a guy named Charles Bernstein. It's either Bernstein or Bernstein. The score for this film is incredible. As soon as you hear the Freddy theme and the lullaby, you know exactly where that's from. Although I do admit, though, I didn't expect that much of the repetitiveness of the theme, but that pops up with like certain like different changes about it, but it's still pretty much 90% of the score, which I was not expecting, and it did get repetitive after a while, but at the same time, it's like, it's a good piece of music to reuse, so it's like I didn't really have a problem with it anyway. So yeah, I think there was like a 25th anniversary edition that came out, which you could also, it's available on streaming services like iTunes, Spotify. I'm sure YouTube Music as well. So, yeah. Anyway, so final thoughts on A Nightmare on Elm Street. What else can I say about it? It's a true horror classic that I feel like everyone should watch, and that it really does work as a standalone horror movie. And should you go and watch the sequels afterwards? Probably not, really. But if I did have to recommend a few from word of mouth, I would say at least watch Part 3 and New Nightmares afterwards. The rest of them you could probably easily skip. But yeah. So, that really ends it for my review of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Stay tuned for next year, where I will hopefully be covering the second film, Freddy's Revenge, which came out only like less than a year later. But that's not going to be what I'm going to be talking about next week. Next week, I'll be discussing the 2017 version of It. Hopefully, next year we can talk about It Chapter 2. But yeah, stay tuned for next week, folks, where I will be discussing the 2017 It. And, so I hope you guys enjoyed this review. You can click over here at my profile picture to go to my channel, or click down on my username and go down there. They also check out my content. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell icon to get notified when future videos are coming out. You can click over here to watch the last 2 videos that got released. And like I said, make sure to follow me on my social media pages down there. My Instagram, Facebook, my Twitter. That's where you get notified when videos are coming out. Also follow me on my Twitch, because I'm going to be doing some occasional live streams every once in a while. And I might be setting up a little bit of a Discord server. There's still some fine tuning that I want to do, but I might release it to the public soon. So, yeah, maybe. We'll see about that one. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this, and stay tuned for next week, where I'll be discussing the 2017 It movie. Live long and prosper. Out.